Tonight, we plunge into the gritty shadows of Neo Gotham, where the legacy of the Dark Knight continues, not through the flicker of a bat signal, but through the pulses of technology and the resolve of a new generation. So, get cozy and join me on tonight's journey through the neon-lit universe of Batman Beyond. Rain slid down the window of the apartment on Decker Street, streaking the neon glow from the billboard across the avenue. The ad cycled through its loop, a woman's face selling perfume, followed by the latest hover car, then the silver ghost of the Wayne Powers logo. Terry McGinnis stood at the glass with his shirt half unbuttoned, watching water trace paths through the vibrant grime of Neo Gotham. Behind him, keys dropped into the ceramic bowl by the door. "You're home early," Dana said. "Slow night." He didn't turn. Her reflection joined his in the dark window, her hair escaping its tie, the collar of her bartending shirt loose at her throat. She looked tired. She always looked tired after the late shift, but she never said so. She came up beside him, close enough that her shoulder brushed his arm. "You're doing it again." "Doing what?" "Staring at the city like it owes you something." Terry almost smiled. "Maybe it does." She kissed his cheek and moved toward the bedroom, her footsteps soft on the worn carpet. "Come to bed. Whatever it is, it'll keep." He didn't answer. On the table, his phone buzzed with a summons from Mr. Wayne. Dana paused at the bedroom door. She didn't turn around. "Again?" "I know." "No." Her voice was quiet, not angry. Quiet was worse. "You don't. You never do." The door clicked shut. Terry stood at the window for another breath, then two, watching the rain and the blinking light and his own reflection. A young man in a half-open shirt who looked, in this particular light, older than his 22 years. Terry reached for his phone. "I'm on my way." The Batcave smelled like limestone, old electronics, and something sharper underneath. Ozone, maybe, or the ghost of heroes long forgotten. Bruce Wayne sat at the central console, his face illuminated by the pale light of a large screen. He didn't look up when Terry descended the last of the stone steps. "You're late." "You always say that." Terry pulled off his jacket and draped it over the back of a chair. "You know Dana and I are living together now. It would be nice if that meant I saw more of her." Bruce ignored the complaint, his fingers moving across the keyboard. The screens shifted. News footage, surveillance stills, a map of Neo Gotham with red markers blinking at scattered points across the grid. "The break-in at Omnitech Systems last night. 3rd this month." "3rd?" Terry leaned over the console. "I thought there were 2. "There were. Now there are 3. Bruce pulled up a feed from Omnitech's security system. A corridor, a sealed door, then nothing. The feed dissolved into static for exactly 47 seconds. When it returned, the door stood open, and the storage room behind it was empty. They took bioorganic processors, 12 units, each one worth millions. Anyone see anything? One guard. He described a shadow that moved the wrong way. Terry straightened. Sounds familiar. let's not jump to conclusions. Bruce's voice was flat, but his eyes, pale blue, still sharp at 84, tracked the screens with something close to hunger. Inque hasn't been seen since her own daughter tried to kill her. Besides, she doesn't have the expertise to know what those processors are worth, or what they're for. Bruce tapped a key. The map replaced itself with a list. Names, faces, dates. Young faces. There's something else. Terry looked at the faces. Students, early 20s, the same age as him and Dana. Who are they? Missing. 5 graduate students from Gotham University's Advanced Sciences program, all within the last 3 weeks. Bruce's voice didn't change. It never did. But Terry had learned to read the small tightenings at the corners of his eyes. Bioengineering, quantum computing, neural mapping. No connection between them except their fields of study. And no one's noticed? The university filed reports. The police opened cases. But 5 students in 3 weeks. Bruce shook his head. No, someone's recruiting. Or someone's taking hostages. Terry stared at the faces. A girl with short hair and glasses. A boy with a scar across his chin. 3 more. Names he'd forget by morning, but faces that would linger. You want me to find them? I want you to patrol Omnitech. Bruce turned from the console. His cane tapped against the stone floor as he moved toward the display cases. The old suits, the trophies, the ghosts. But the thefts and the disappearances aren't separate. I know it. How? Because I've been doing this for 60 years. Bruce stopped before the case that held the first bat suit. The one from before, from the old Gotham, his reflection ghosting over the yellow emblem. He didn't touch the glass, but his hand lifted slightly, as if drawn. The thefts are your priority. And the students? Maxine is already on it. Terry looked at the faces on the screen, then at Bruce's back. You gave her a solo mission. She's been training for months. She's ready. He turned. The cane tapped once against the stone. You had only days before I put you in the field. That was different. Was it? Terry didn't answer. Because it wasn't. And they both knew it. And Bruce never argued points he'd already won. The old man returned to the console and sat down, and for a moment, he looked every one of his 84 years. Go, see what you can find at Omnitech, Bruce finished. I'll call Max and fill her in. Maxine Gibson lived in a dormitory room that was too small for one person, let alone the 2 lives she was trying to cram into it. Textbooks stacked against the wall, a half-eaten protein bar on the desk. Her laptop open to a paper on quantum entanglement that she'd been writing for 3 days. She sat cross-legged on her bed, staring at the communicator Bruce had given her, a slim black disc that looked like a compact mirror until you pressed the right spot and it came alive with light. It's not complicated, Bruce's voice said from the disc. You find them. You bring them home. Bruce, I know some of these students, she began. They're the best and brightest. Which is why I'm sending you. Max closed her eyes. When she opened them, the disc still glowed, and Mr. Wayne was still waiting. And somewhere out in the wet Neo Gotham night, 5 of Gotham University's finest were missing. Fine, she said. Where do I start? With the last one, Teresa Yar, disappeared 4 days ago. Her roommate is still on campus. The disc went dark. Max sat in the silence of her dorm room and tried to remember what it felt like before. Before Bruce, before the training, before the suit she'd hidden in a sealed compartment under her bed. 2 months ago, she'd been a computer science student with a smart mouth and a habit of noticing things she shouldn't. Now she was something else, something still taking shape. She pulled the compartment open and looked at the suit folded inside. Black and violet, smaller than Batman's. Lighter, built for speed over strength. It was a sleek combination of Barbara Gordon's original design, but modified with advanced tech by Bruce himself. She'd only worn it twice so far in her fights against Stalker. The memory still caused her body to wince with phantom pain. Oh well, she muttered to herself. 3rd time's a charm. The Batwoman suit fit like a surgeon's glove. Max crouched on the ledge of the Gotham University Library, 9 stories above the quad, and tried not to think about the drop. The rain had stopped. The campus spread beneath her in a grid of wet paths and amber lights. The old stone buildings shouldering up against glass-walled labs that hadn't existed a decade ago. Students moved between pools of light, late-night study groups, couples walking too slow, a lone figure on a bicycle cutting a dark line across the plaza. She pressed a finger to the side of her cowl. "Bruce." "I read you," he replied, his voice a dry whisper in her ear. "I'm near Teresa's dorm, Hargrove Hall. I'm going in. Remember your training." "I remember." She fired the heel thrusters before he could say anything else. The sustained blast carried her across the quad in a silent arc. For one breath, she was flying between buildings, between earth and sky, between the girl she'd been and the woman she was becoming. And then the thrusters faded. Her boots touched the ledge of Hargrove Hall, and she was moving, and the fear that had tightened her chest dissolved into something sharper. The window to Teresa's room was locked. Batwoman produced a thin tool from her belt and worked the latch in 6 seconds, 3 seconds slower than Terry would have done it. She filed that away, a mistake to learn from. Inside, the room was half empty. Teresa's side still held her things, a neatly made bed, a stack of textbooks on the nightstand, a photo of an older woman who had to be her mother. The roommate's side was bare, probably moved out after Teresa disappeared. People got scared. Max understood that. She worked through the room in silence, opening drawers, checking the desk, running her gloved fingers along the underside of shelves. In the desk drawer, she found a journal, handwritten, which was unusual enough to catch her attention. Most students her age did everything on screens. The journal was full of Teresa's handwriting, small and precise, the letters crowded together like they were trying to save space. Batwoman flipped through until she found the last entry, dated 4 days ago, the day Teresa disappeared. "Meeting tomorrow, 7 p.m, Old Morgan Wing, North Campus. The job seems kinda sketchy, but the opportunity is too good to pass. A research position with Dr." The name was scratched out, hard enough to tear the paper. Max stared at the torn page. Then she pressed a finger to her cowl again. "Bruce," she whispered, her soft tone belying the shock in her eyes. "I think I found something." The Batmobile flew over the dockside grid, like a dark cloud given purpose before landing on the tallest structure. The Omnitech facility rose above the old warehouses, a glass tower that reflected the city's neon in fractured angles. Below it, in the shadow of the loading docks, Batman found what the security cameras hadn't: a ventilation shaft with its grate removed and replaced almost perfectly. Almost. He pried it open. The shaft was dark and narrow and smelled of industrial solvent. He went in anyway. The interior of Omnitech was silent. The night shift had been sent home after the break-in, the offices sealed, the labs dark. Batman moved through the corridors without sound, his boots finding the spaces between security sensors by instinct. 4 years had taught him the rhythm of these places, the blind spots, the gaps, the moments when a camera's sweep left a corridor unobserved. In the storage room, he stopped. The shelves stood empty where the bioorganic processors had been. But it wasn't the absence that held his attention. It was what remained. A single drop of black fluid on the floor near the door. Still wet, still shifting. It looked almost like ink. He knelt beside it, producing a small vial from his belt. The fluid moved as he approached, reaching toward him, then recoiling, as if it recognized him. He collected the sample and sealed it. It was her. Ink was here, he said into the cowl's communicator. She left a trace. Bruce's voice came back after a pause. Get the sample back to the cave. I'll analyze it. Batman straightened. Something else had caught his eye. A scuff mark on the wall near the door, too regular to be random. He traced it with a gloved finger. A shipping code, stamped in haste, the kind used by the underground freight movers who operated in the old subway tunnels beneath the grid. Got a lead on where the processors went, he said. I'm following it. Be careful. I'm always careful. Humph, Bruce grunted. If ink is involved, you need to be extra careful. Terry almost smiled. Then he was gone, back through the shaft, back into the night. The old subway tunnels ran beneath the dockside grid like the fossilized veins of some buried beast. Batman dropped from a maintenance hatch and landed on the tracks, his boots sending up a puff of rust and dust. The air down here was thick with the smell of damp concrete and something else, the faint, acrid tang of chemicals, the kind that clung to places where heavy machinery had run recently. He followed the tunnel east. The shipping code on the wall had been a signature, a mark used by a freighter named Kelso, who ran goods through the underground without asking questions. Kelso operated out of a repurposed station 3 miles down the line. The station emerged from the dark like a wound in the tunnel wall. Flickering lights, stacked crates, 2 men playing cards at a folding table near the old ticket booth. Batman came at them from above. He dropped between them without a sound, and by the time they registered his presence, one was already on the ground, and the other was pinned against the ticket booth with a forearm across his throat. Kelso, Batman said. Where is he? The man's eyes were wide. Back room. Please. Batman let him go. Both men scrambled away into the tunnel and didn't look back. Kelso was in the back room, hunched over a desk covered in manifests and a half-eaten burrito. He was a thick man in his 50s with hands that had done too much work and eyes that had seen too much dark. When Batman entered, he didn't even look up. "Took you long enough," Kelso said. "Figured you'd show up sooner or later. The bioorganics, Omnitech, all of it. You know who took them. I know who paid me to move them." Kelso leaned back in his chair. The chair groaned. "Woman? Never saw her face. Paid in cash and didn't haggle. That's always trouble." "What did she look like? Didn't I just say I never saw her face?" Kelso picked up a manifest and tossed it across the desk. Delivery was to an address up north. Old research annex. Wayne Powers used to own it, back before the merger. Batman caught the manifest. The address was printed in neat block letters. Morgan Research Annex, North District, Level 4. Morgan? Dr. Spencer Morgan. Kelso nodded slowly. Worked for Wayne Powers about 15 years back. Genetics division. Got fired for running experiments that weren't exactly in the employee handbook. Word is he's been doing private research ever since. Private research on what? Kelso spread his hands. "I just move the boxes, man. I don't ask what's in them." Batman looked at the manifest again, then at Kelso. "If I find out you lied, you'll what? Scowl at me harder?" Kelso almost grinned. "I told you what I know. Morgan's got himself a partner. The woman who paid me. She wore a trench coat and hat tipped down, but..." He paused, an unsettled look darkening his features. She seemed to move wrong, like her joints don't work the way joints should. That's all I got. It was enough. Batwoman found the old Morgan wing on the north edge of campus, half hidden behind a stand of trees that had been planted when the building was new and now grew wild, their branches scraping against boarded windows. She approached through the trees, moving from shadow to shadow, the way Bruce had taught her. The building was dark, a 3-story brick structure with a name carved above the door, Morgan Research Laboratory. The name was old. The locks on the door were new. Someone still used this place. She circled the building twice, checking for security. There was none visible. That worried her more than guards would have. Either whoever used this place was careless, or they were confident no one would find it. She picked the lock on a side door. Inside, the air was cold and still, and carried the faint chemical smell of old laboratories. She moved through the corridors, her cowl's night vision casting the world in pale green. On the second floor, she found the office. It was small and cluttered. A desk, a filing cabinet, a computer terminal that hummed with quiet power. The screen was dark, but the machine was running. Someone had been here recently. She approached the desk. Papers were spread across it. Research notes, chemical formulas, diagrams of something that looked like a containment chamber. She photographed each page with the camera embedded in her glove, and then she heard the footsteps. 2 sets, coming up the stairs. She activated the suit's invisibility cloak and backed up to the corner of the room, just as the door opened. "I told you I need more time," a man said, his face aged, grey hair slightly disheveled. "Well, I'm running out of time, Dr. Morgan," said the second figure, a woman by the sound of her voice, though her body and face were concealed by a large trench coat and hat. They moved closer to her position. Max held her breath. "The stabilization matrix is nearly complete," Spencer said. His voice was thin and precise and carried the particular anxiety of a man who'd made promises he couldn't keep. "The processors you acquired. They'll let me finalize the calibration. Soon, Inque. Soon." "You've been saying that for months," she hissed. Max recognized the name, Inque. She'd heard Terry speak of his encounters with her. They didn't sound pleasant. But as Inque moved around, Batwoman noticed something. The black ichor dripping beneath her coat. It collected by her feet, a small puddle that followed her every step before struggling to re-merge with her. "The neural mapping data from the students has accelerated things considerably," Morgan said. "The Yar girl in particular. She identified a resonance frequency that..." He paused, looking towards the fluids beneath Inque with some annoyance. "Can you do something about that?" Max watched with a growing sense of pity as Inque pulled a hypo syringe from her coat pocket and injected herself with what was clearly a painful concoction. "Damn these injections," she cursed. "They're becoming more frequent. You and your students better hurry with this cure." Morgan's silence stretched one beat too long. "I will. We will." He cleared his throat. "And the students won't be a problem. They think they're working on a breakthrough in adaptive biotechnology." Inque grinned, regaining her cohesion. "And when they're no longer useful?" "I don't know." "You do," she cooed, back to her normal self. "You've known from the beginning what happens to them. That's why I chose you, Doctor. Not your brilliance, your cowardice. You'll sacrifice anyone to save yourself. Won't you, Spence?" Dr. Morgan didn't answer. He didn't need to. They exited the room, their footsteps receding down the hall. Batwoman lingered a full minute, barely breathing. Then she stood and moved to the computer terminal and began downloading everything she could. "Dr. Spencer Morgan has them," she said into the communicator. "Him and Inque, they're working together." Bruce paused. That confirms what Kelso said. Any idea what they're up to?" "They're creating a cure," she replied. "A stabilization matrix," Morgan called it. "The bioorganic processors are for the calibration array." "A cure for what?" "For Inque." Batwoman's voice grew softer. "Bruce, she's dying. Terry told me he hasn't seen Inque since her daughter Deanna tricked her. Well, whatever she did to her, the solvent, it never healed. She's been taking injections just to stay alive. Morgan promised her a cure, but he can't deliver on his own. That's why he brought in the students." Silence on the line. Then, "He's using them to solve problems he can't. And Inque will kill them when he's done." Another pause. Longer. "Then we don't have much time," Bruce said. "Morgan must be operating from his northern research facilities. I'll send you the location. Batman is already en route. Meet him there." The communicator went silent. Batwoman exited through the window, igniting her thrusters as she took to the sky. The Batmobile carried him across the vibrant skyline of Neo Gotham, the city blurring past him in grids of light and shadow. Terry angled toward the North District, where the Morgan Research Annex waited like a secret someone had tried to bury. Batman landed on the roof of a neighboring building and surveyed the research facility through his cowl's magnification. It was a low structure, mostly concrete and corrugated steel, with windows that had been painted black from the inside. A single light glowed above a side door. 2 guards, private security, armed, stood watch. "Any idea if Inque is inside?" he asked Bruce through the communicator. She and Spencer were just at Morgan's GU facility, but they could be back any moment. Be careful. If what Batwoman reported is true, then Inque is dying, and she will be more desperate and dangerous than ever. "I know," he assured before entering the building. The facility's interior was a labyrinth of corridors. He moved through it in silence, avoiding the guards, following the subtle signs of recent use, scuff marks on the floor, the faint hum of machinery, the particular warmth that equipment gave off when it had been running for days. In the central chamber, he found what he was looking for. The room was vast, a converted warehouse space filled with equipment that belonged in a cutting-edge genetics lab. Workstations lined the walls, cryogenic storage units hummed in rows, and in the center of it all, rising toward the ceiling like a monument to someone's obsession, stood the array. It was a sphere, maybe 15 feet in diameter, built from concentric rings of bioorganic processors and neural interface modules. Cables snaked from it in every direction, connecting to power supplies and monitoring stations, and something that looked like a containment pod. Human-sized, open at the front, its interior slick with black fluid. The students worked in a small laboratory located at the southeast corner of the chamber. 5 of them, young and hollow-eyed, moving with the mechanical precision of people who hadn't slept in days. Guards watched them from the corners of the room. And there, standing before the sphere with her back to him, was Inque. She looked almost human tonight, a woman's shape, dark and fluid, her edges softening and sharpening in a slow rhythm like breathing. She was speaking to someone. Morgan, Terry realized, the gaunt man in the lab coat who stood beside her, his fingers laced together like he was praying. "Almost done with the final calibration," Spencer said. 12 hours. Then the stabilization sequence can begin. She turned back to the array. "Good. We'll begin the sequence at dawn." Batman catalogued the room. 5 students in a sealed lab, 4 guards, Inque, Dr. Morgan, the array, the containment pod. Too many variables for a direct approach. He needed backup. He needed Max. He slipped back into the shadows and up through the elevator shaft. Batwoman met him on the roof. "You saw the students?" she asked. "Are they?" "They're alive," he confirmed. "Tired, but alive." Batman crouched at the roof's edge, watching the facility below. Morgan's built a stabilization matrix, bioorganic processors, neural mapping interfaces. It's a treatment system. He's trying to cure her. "I know," Batwoman whispered. "And once the treatment works, she won't need them anymore," he finished grimly, turning to look at her. "She'll clean house by removing every loose end. We have 12 hours until that happens. Maybe less. Max straightened, her posture eager. So, we go in? We go in smart. Batman turned to look at her. In the suit, in the dark, she looked smaller than she was, but her eyes were steady, and her hands weren't shaking. You've never faced Inque before. No, she admitted. She's fast, faster than she looks. Don't let her touch you. Don't let her surround you. Below them, a guard lit a cigarette, and the flame caught his face for a moment, young, bored, unaware. We split up, he said. You get the students out. I'll distract Inque and Morgan. And the array, we destroy it, all of it. Batwoman nodded. She checked her belt. Snares, smoke pellets, her compact stun baton, all there. You're ready for this, Terry assured, his voice soft despite the cowl's modulation. I know. She didn't look at him. Doesn't mean I'm not scared. Good. Fear keeps you careful. Careful? She mused with a smirk. That's a new one from you. Yeah, Bruce may be rubbing off on me. They moved in sync, two shadows disappearing down the ventilation shaft. In the heart of the facility, the array hummed. Dr. Spencer Morgan stood before it, his reflection swimming in the dark surfaces of the bioorganic processors. His hands moved across a control panel, making adjustments too fine for most eyes to see. On the screen beside him, a model of Inque's cellular structure rotated slowly, a nightmare of instability, bonds forming and breaking in real time. The calibration is complete, he said. Inque materialized beside him, her form dripping excessively. You're certain this time? She asked. I'm certain the matrix will stabilize your cellular decay. Morgan's fingers paused on the controls. Whether it will hold permanently. It has to hold. Her voice cracked on the last word as she reached for her last syringe. The injections are failing, Morgan said quietly. Aren't they? She plunged the needle into her hip and shuddered before responding. I have maybe a week left. Less if I exert myself. So you will make this work, Doctor. You will make it work, or you'll kill me. Yes, I'm aware. Kill you? She laughed. No, Spencer, my dear. If this fails, I'll do something much worse. I'll die. With that simple admission, she pulled back, her form coiling toward the containment pod. Begin the sequence. The doctor didn't flinch. And if there are interruptions? She smiled malevolently. Then I'll deal with them. Batman came through the air duct. He was already moving before his boots touched the floor, a blur of black against the sterile white of the laboratory. The guards reacted exactly as he expected. Slowly, then not at all. He put them down in the space of 4 breaths. Precise strikes, minimal force. They crumpled and didn't rise. From inside the lab, the students looked up from their workstations. Their eyes were glassy, unfocused, exhausted past the point of recognition. One of them, a girl with glasses, blinked at him like he was something from a dream. The door, he said. go. Now. After a moment's hesitation, they went. Inque rose from the shadows near the array like a wave forming from still water. Batman. Her voice came from everywhere at once. Did you miss me? Step away from the console, Spencer. It's over. Dr. Morgan stood beside the containment pod, his face pale as paper. His hands gripped the edge of the control panel like a drowning man clutching wreckage. I can't. If I don't finish the treatment... Spare me, Doc. Batman moved forward. The suit's sensors tracked Inque's shifting form, trying to lock on and failing. You don't understand. Spencer's voice cracked. She's dying. The injections aren't working anymore. 1 week, maybe less. She came to me 6 months ago, and I told her I could fix it. I told her I could stabilize the cellular decay. I lied. His hands were shaking. I lied, and she believed me, and now if I fail, she will kill me. So you sacrificed the students instead. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. Batman's voice was cold. You just chose poorly. In the silence that followed, Batwoman entered through the side door. She moved low and fast, herding the last of the students toward the exit. One of them stumbled. She caught them, steadied them, pushed them forward. Get them clear, Batman called out. On it! Her voice was tight but controlled. Inque laughed, a wet, fractured sound. 2 of you now. How sweet. She came at him in a rush of black, her form expanding and splitting, tendrils of liquid shadow reaching for his throat. Batman dodged, barely, and rolled behind a workstation. The equipment sparked where her attack landed. He came up with the stun baton extended, the head crackling with current. She flowed around it, around him, and reformed at his back. He spun, but she was already gone again, melting into the floor, reappearing on the catwalk above. You can't touch me, she said. You never could. Maybe not. He fired his jet boots and launched himself upward. But I only need to destroy the Matrix. Her expression changed. For the first time, something flickered in those black eyes. Not anger, fear. Don't, she pleaded. You don't understand. I understand you're dying. I understand you're desperate. He landed on the catwalk, 10 feet from her. But those students don't deserve to die so you can live. I've been dying for 3 years. Her voice dropped, the theatrical menace bleeding out of it, leaving something rawer. 3 years of injections, of hiding, of feeling my own body trying to come apart. My daughter did this to me, my own daughter. And you want me to just accept it, lie down and dissolve? For a moment, just a moment, Terry hesitated. It was only a moment, but it was long enough. The Matrix pulsed. Dr. Morgan had not activated it in panic. He had activated it with purpose, his hand slamming down on the console with the desperate clarity of a man who knew he was too committed to turn back now. The concentric rings began to spin, the bioorganic processes flaring to life, and the containment pod hissed open. What are you doing? Inque's voice pitched upward. Giving you what you want, Morgan said. The calibration is close enough. 91% certainty. You mean? Yes. There's a 9% chance you die. 100% if I do nothing. He looked at her, his eyes manic. Get in the pod. It's the only chance you have. Inque stared at him, then at Batman, who was already moving toward the power couplings, then at the pod, its interior slick with conductive gel, the array's rings spinning faster and faster around it. She lunged. Her body stretched into a ribbon of black and shot across the space between the catwalk and the pod. Batman dove. Too late. The pod sealed around her with a pressurized hiss, and the array screamed to life. "Damn it!" Batman muttered. On the ground floor, Batwoman looked up as the last of the students left. "What's happening?" Morgan activated the matrix. He was already moving toward the power supply. "Go. Make sure they get out safely." She hesitated a moment, then she followed the students out the exit. Batman grabbed Morgan by the collar and hauled him to his feet. "Shut it off." "I can't." Morgan's voice was almost serene. "Once the sequence initiates, it can't be interrupted without killing her. And if she dies in there, the energy discharge from her cellular collapse will level this building. Your choice." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Morgan met his eyes. "I've spent 6 months building this machine. Did you think I wouldn't protect it?" A sound from the pod stopped them both. It was Inque's voice, but not speaking, screaming. The scream went on for what felt like an eternity. It was not a sound of rage or fear. It was the sound of a body being unmade and remade at the cellular level, of bonds that had been breaking for 3 years, suddenly forced back together, of dissolution reversed. Then, silence. The array's rings slowed. The lights on the control panel shifted from red to amber to green, one by one, like a countdown to something none of them could predict. The pod's seal cracked with a pneumatic sigh. Nothing emerged. Batman released Morgan and approached the pod. The interior was dark. The conductive gel had turned opaque during the process, a black mirror that revealed nothing. Then the surface rippled. She rose from the gel, slowly, deliberately, her form coalescing from liquid to solid with a precision she had not possessed in years. Her outline was sharp now, clean. When she stepped out of the pod and her bare feet touched the concrete floor, she left no dripping residue behind. Inque lifted her hand and turned it in the light. Her fingers were defined, stable. The black surface of her skin caught the glow of the array and held it. "It worked," she gloated. She looked at Morgan. For a long moment, no one moved. Then she smiled. "Thank you, Spencer." Morgan just nodded once, his face unreadable. She turned to Batman, her form sharpened, not attacking, but ready. The ease in her posture was new, the confidence of someone who was no longer running out of time. "We don't have to fight," she said. "The students are free. You have what you came for. I have what I came for." "You're still a criminal," Batman said. "Still a killer." "Perhaps." She flowed backward toward the crack in the wall, the drainage tunnel, the escape route that had always been waiting. "But I'm a killer with time now, and you have no idea what I can do with time." "Stop." But she was already gone, slipping through the crack like water through fingers, her form compressing and expanding and vanishing into the dark. The last thing that remained was her voice, echoing back from the tunnel. "Tell my daughter I'm coming for her." Then silence. Batman stood at the center of the ruined laboratory, the dead array humming its last residual notes around him. He did not pursue. The tunnel system beneath the industrial park branched into 100 paths, and by the time he navigated them, she could be anywhere. He turned to Batwoman as she re-entered the chamber. "The students?" he asked. "Outside. Police are on their way. Bruce called them in." She looked at the pod, then at him. "She's cured." "Yeah. Which means she's stronger than she's been in years." "Yeah. And we just let her go." "We didn't let her do anything," he assured. "She outmaneuvered us, thanks to Dr. Bonkers over there." Across the room, Dr. Spencer Morgan had sunk to his knees beside his control panel. He was staring at his hands, the hands that had built the machine, that had tricked 5 students into helping a dying monster, with the hollow expression of a man doing inventory on his soul and finding one solitary kernel of merit for his actions. "I saved her," he breathed. "I'm a doctor. That's my oath, and that's what I did. Yes, yes, I'm a good doctor." Batman walked to him and pulled a pair of restraint cuffs from his belt. "Dr. Morgan," he said, "you'll answer for your crimes: kidnapping, theft, and conspiracy to commit murder." Morgan didn't resist. He held out his wrists, and the cuffs clicked into place. But I'm a good doctor," he said quietly. "Saving people is what good doctors do. That's between you and the justice system. You don't understand. I gave her back her life. She'll do whatever she wants. That's the problem with monsters, Doctor." Batman hauled him to his feet. "You don't get to control them once you've let them out of the box." He handed Morgan off to Batwoman, who secured him to a structural pillar with a second set of cuffs while they waited for the police. "What about the array?" she asked. Batman looked at the sphere. The concentric rings, the spent processors, the containment pod still dripping black gel onto the concrete. Some of the bioorganic components were still glowing faintly. Still functional, maybe. Still dangerous. "We burn it," he said. He produced an incendiary pellet from his belt, armed it, and placed it at the base of the control console. 30 seconds, enough time to clear the building. They left Morgan at the pillar. He'd be the first thing the police found. Outside, the first pale edge of dawn was beginning to show above the industrial park. The 5 students huddled together near the perimeter fence. They looked hollow and exhausted and alive. Batman watched the building for a long moment. The windows flickered orange. Then the fire suppression system failed, and the flames took hold, and somewhere inside the ruin, the array collapsed in on itself with a groan of twisting metal. "She'll be back," Batwoman said. "I know. And next time, she won't be dying. She'll be at full strength." "True." He turned toward the Batmobile, hidden in the shadow of a neighboring warehouse. "But next time, so will you." She didn't answer, but when she followed him into the dark, her stride was steady. The Batcave was quiet, the kind of quiet that came after the fight, after the flight, after the adrenaline bled away and left nothing but the ache of tired muscles and the slow settling of the mind. Maxine Gibson sat on the edge of the medical cot, her cowl pulled back, her face smudged with dust and something that might have been blood. The cut on her arm had stopped bleeding, Bruce had looked at it, grunted, and handed her a bandage without comment. Terry stood near the console. His suit was still on, but the cowl was off, his hair dark with sweat. He looked tired. He looked older than he should. "The students," Max said. "Will they be okay?" "The police picked them up," Bruce answered. His voice was level, but there was a weight beneath it. "A few days rest and they'll recover. Physically, at least." "And Morgan?" "Gotham PD took him into custody 20 minutes ago. The evidence you downloaded from his campus office, combined with the equipment and witness testimony from tonight, is enough to put him away for life." He paused. "He's already confessed. All of it. The kidnappings, the experiments, the conspiracy with Inque. He didn't even ask for a lawyer." Max let out a sigh. "Good. Is it?" Bruce turned from the console. His cane tapped once against the stone. "Morgan was a coward and a monster, but he was our best source of information on Inque's condition. Now he's in a cell, and she's out there, cured." Terry straightened. "We didn't have a choice, Bruce. By the time we realized what Morgan was doing, the sequence had already started. The system was shielded against interruption. If we'd forced a shutdown, the energy discharge would have taken out the whole building." "I'm not questioning your choices." Bruce moved toward the display cases, his reflection ghosting across the glass. "I'm stating facts. Inque has been dying for 3 years. It made her desperate, reckless, vulnerable. Tonight, Morgan solved that problem for her." "So she's back," Max said. "Full strength. Worse than back." Bruce stopped before the case that held the first batsuit. "She's had 3 years to think about what she'd do if she ever got the chance. 3 years of pain, of hiding, of watching her own body betray her. That kind of suffering doesn't go away when the wound heals. It becomes something else." "Vengeance," Terry said quietly. "Among other things." Bruce turned. His eyes, pale in the cave's dim light, held them both. "She mentioned her daughter before she escaped. Deanna, the one who poisoned her with the solvent. She said to tell her she's coming for her. Then Deanna Clay needs to be warned. And we need to be ready." Bruce's jaw tightened. A dying Inque was dangerous. A cured Inque with a vendetta is something else entirely. The silence stretched. Max looked at her hands, at the bandage on her arm, at the suit she was still wearing. "So we failed," she said. "No." Bruce's voice cut through the quiet. "You saved 5 students. You destroyed a black site laboratory. And Morgan, the man who enabled all of it, will never see the outside of a prison cell again." He moved toward her. "That's not failure. That's just a mission with a cost. That cost being a fully powered supervillain with a grudge. The cost being the one variable you couldn't control. It happens. It will happen again." He stopped in front of her. "What matters is how you respond." Max met his eyes. She didn't look away. "Then we get ready." Bruce held her gaze for a long moment. Then, so briefly she might have imagined it, the corner of his mouth twitched upward. He said. "Yes, we do." He turned to Terry. You led tonight. You made the call to split the mission, to prioritize the students, to contain Morgan rather than pursue Inque. All of those were correct. Terry didn't answer, but the slack in his posture shifted, a straightening, a settling, like a weight that had been pressing down had lifted just a little. And Maxine? Bruce's voice softened, barely. You moved through an enemy facility and helped save 5 hostages. You made mistakes, but you didn't freeze. You didn't run. That's what it takes to be a hero. Thanks, she managed. I think. Go home, both of you. He turned back toward the console, but paused. Tomorrow, we start preparing for whatever Inque does next. Tonight, you've earned the rest. His apartment on Decker Street was dark when he entered. Terry moved through the rooms without sound, years of practice, and stopped at the bedroom door. Dana was asleep. The blankets were pulled up to her chin, and her breathing was slow and even, and the faint light from the window caught the curve of her cheek and made it look like something from a painting. He didn't wake her. He just stood in the doorway and watched her breathe, and for a few minutes, just a few, he wasn't Batman. He wasn't the legacy, or the mission, or the shadow that moved between neon lights. He was just a man who'd come home. Then he closed the door and went to sleep beside her. The city hummed its endless song outside the window, and somewhere in the dark, more threats waited. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, there was only this: the quiet, the dark, and the woman who waited for him, even when she didn't know where he'd been. It was all the reward Terry McGinnis needed.